Prince Andrew agreeing to settle a sexual abuse lawsuit brought by Virginia Guiffre.
Prince Andrew is said to be planning a surprise return to public life.
The Duke of York has settled the sex assault case.
Queen Elizabeth's younger son, Prince Andrew, is settling a sexual assault lawsuit.
Settled, but perhaps far from done. On both sides of the Atlantic, the Duke of York's settlement with Virginia Guiffre dominating the headlines. And on both sides of this damaging and very public case, questions still to be answered. The settlement came just 6 months after Virginia Guiffre filed her suit against the Duke, claiming he had sexually abused her when she was a child and a victim of trafficking by his friend, the convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. There was no admission of wrongdoing in yesterday's settlement, but acknowledgement that she had been a victim of abuse. From the outset, Miss Guiffre said this is what she wanted.
He knows exactly what he's done, and I hope he comes clean about it.
So is this settlement vindication enough for her and the other women she said she fought for? Sarah Ransom says she was repeatedly raped by Epstein on his private island. Bob Lewis is her lawyer.
She feels vindicated, further validates her own claims that she was sex trafficked by Epstein and Maxwell.
But of course, this is a settlement without any admission of wrongdoing. So can it truly be a vindication?
I do understand survivors are not happy about, but in this world, typically we don't get 100% of what we want. No, I'll take 80%. He says now that he essentially believes Miss Guiffre and the other victims, which for years he was saying they were all making it up. So it goes a long ways to validating their claims, and I think in that sense it is a victory. This could give encouragement to those who may have not yet spoken out, and in that sense may move us along to finding out who else was involved in the sex trafficking operation.
But for Prince Andrew now, there will be no public hearing. The statement yesterday suggesting his focus was rehabilitating a reputation which has seen him isolated from the royal family and stripped of all his military titles. In their place, he will seek a new role to fight against the evils of sex trafficking and for its victims.
Having a senior royal campaign for your cause would be regarded by most charities as priceless. But it's not clear how much victims of sexual abuse and trafficking value the notion the Duke of York will now fight for them. For years, he even denied knowing the woman he's now settled with, and right up until the end allowed his legal team to rubbish her case and question her credibility in the most personal of ways.
As recently as October, the legal team submitted documents to the court accusing Miss Guiffre of pursuing a baseless lawsuit, simply looking for another payday. They even referenced tabloid articles calling her not a sex slave, but a money-hungry sex kitten. One of the many extraordinary things about that statement yesterday is this idea that Prince Andrew is now looking to fight for the victims of sex trafficking, for victims of abuse. How do you think that will go down with those victims?
There was an enormous level of arrogance in that statement. What exactly does Prince Andrew have to offer? Prince Andrew leaned on every single one of the worst myths and stereotypes that victims of sexual violence face about whether, their honour, what their previous sexual behaviours. They made out like she was in it just for a payday. Victims who I work with would not welcome Prince Andrew sitting down and expecting them to help his pathway to redemption.
The Duke of York may yet need some charity himself. It is not yet clear exactly how much he has agreed to pay Miss Guiffre, nor crucially, where that money will come from.
Well, joining me now is Labour Shadow Culture Minister Rachel Maskel, whose constituency is York Central and who's called for the Duke of York to give up the title. Good evening. How sure are you that your constituents agree with you? Have you been inundated with messages?
I have, but also our local paper took a poll, and from that poll, 88% of people living in York said that they want this disassociation. Clearly, York is a global city, and carrying the title of a duke is an ambassador role where you take our name across the globe. And of course, what we want to ensure is the real values. We are England's only human rights city, which is there to support women, believe women in what they say. And of course, what we have seen over months and months is a woman being undermined. And that is so typical of what we see across society at this time. So this is really important. If Andrew has heard and heeded, he could take the first act of listening to what people in my city are saying, and many of them survivors of sexual violence.
I mean, he's admitted nothing, he's been convicted of nothing, but what you're saying is it the change in position from attacking Ms. Giuffre before to what it says in the statement, which is sort of clearing her of anything?
Well, statements and even issuing compensation is one thing, but it will not mean a thing if there is not action which follows up. And of course, at this time, I would say the action that's needed is real reflection. And one of the things that people in my city are asking for is to reflect on the title he carries, carrying the name of our city. And as a result of people saying they no longer want that association with him, the first step he could take is to voluntarily relinquish that title.
Right, but the questions over the monarchy now are getting much bigger, aren't they, with the announcements of this investigation by police into the Prince's Charitable Foundation over cash for honours allegations. I mean, what does that mean for the whole question of the monarchy now?
And there certainly were questions as well about the appointment of the charity commissioner, who on their appointment panel had people from the Prince's organisations. So we have to look at the whole system. But when it comes to the monarchy, again, I think there needs to be a real reflection. We must remember that this is a Jubilee year where we are honouring somebody who has loyally served our country, but we're not seeing that same representation in the next generation. And I think there are serious questions that now must be asked.
I mean, you know, we've been asking serious questions about what would happen if the Prime Minister was questioned by police under caution. It is conceivable, we don't know where this investigation is going to lead, it's conceivable that Prince Charles could also be questioned by police, either as a witness or under caution. If that were to happen, do you think it is possible for Prince Charles to become King Charles?
Well, what we are seeing is men of power and privilege being able to use that position in order to protect themselves, whereas we're not seeing the same justice for other people, and that has got to stop. The Prime Minister clearly has got to be honest about what has happened, and that is what everybody is asking for. And he himself, another example, is somebody that denied there was a happening, denied there were parties, and
but
then
let's keep it on the royal family. I mean, the question is, do you think it's possible, because the Queen, after all, has addressed the question of what will happen after her reign is over by talking about her wish for Queen Camilla. I mean, do you think this could open up a wider debate about the future status of the monarchy?
Well, I think it absolutely does. And that's why we have got to look at the situation of power and privilege in our society and the role that it can play. And when we've seen that it can be used for exploitation, you know, whether it is the questions over charitable funds or whether it's the question over personal conduct, then of course there has got to be question. Nobody has a right to reign. And I think we've got to seriously ask those questions now.